This thing that I have found is what I would call my gracious space. Hi folks, Jack Carlisle here with Gracious Spaces, and once again I had the lovely and beautiful Annie Morgan with me today, and we have a very special guest today, Annie, as you know, and in researching and finding more about this individual, I was coming up with words on how to describe this individual, and the word that kept popping in my mind was powerful. And I'm looking so forward to this conversation today as we get into the meat of it all. And it's also a great episode because she's coming from Zoom, in the Zoom world, and from Oregon. And this is a first for us, so forgive us as we fumble our way through it, folks. But why don't you give our guest a proper introduction now that I've kind of beefed that up.
So, you did a great job, Jack.
Oh, thank you.
I love your intros, especially the lovely and beautiful part.
Yes.
Okay, so Jack is right in everything that he said. Our guest today is very powerful and very. I'm extremely impressed because I think that our guest today is someone has the strength that people long for in their lives at times. And when they're facing something that they're having a difficulty with and maybe coming to terms with or accepting, this is the level of strength that one needs in order to move forward and make decisions that are good for themselves. So I would really love to introduce to all of our listeners today, Annie Graham. So welcome, Annie. We are so pleased and honored and excited to have you sitting in our studio with us today. Well, via Zoom, somewhat sitting in our studio via Zoom. So thank you for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure. And you flatter me unmercifully. I'm not sure I can live up to your opening.
Oh, I got more, Annie. I got more.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna give our listeners a little background on you.
Okay.
So as a
Okay.
young male, you became a Vietnam veteran while you were serving in the U.S. Navy on a nuclear submarine. And you wrote a book called Tall Annie, correct?
Correct.
So let's see that. Let's see the cover of that book. I love that cover. And I know there's a story behind that. So,
Yeah.
and in that book, you have an incredible true story of a submarine, when your submarine rescued a downed air crew in the middle of a typhoon. And I know that's just one of many, many stories that you tell in your book that confirm everything I said in my opening about you. So, so let's start. Are you ready, Jack? You ready to dive in on this?
Let's go.
Okay, so I want to ask you, because we were talking about something before we went on air. You have 3 phases of life, correct, that you live by? Is that
Yes.
the proper way to introduce that? Okay.
Yes.
Share with us what that is.
Okay. It's something I was not fully aware of until I met my husband, Frank, 22 years ago. We just celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. But he shared with me a perspective that life exists in. Most people go through 3 global general phases. In the first phase of your life, you are being given everything. You're a child, of course. You're given food and shelter, and if you get an allowance, or you get love, hopefully, and education, and you grow up being on the receiving end of things. In the middle phase of your life, you start providing all that for yourself. You develop a career. You possibly create a family. You earn money. You get a reputation. People get to know you. You have friends. All of this is acquiring, and you have hobbies. Maybe you invest in baseball cards or whatever, fancy cars. You acquire things for yourself. But in the third phase of your life, you realize that the things have no intrinsic value as far as relationships with people. And you start to realize that people are what's important in life, much more so than you perhaps did before. Some people get to the third phase of life very early. Some people never get there. But in the third phase of your life, you become aware of the importance of having a generous spirit, of being kind, helping when you can. And that doesn't mean letting yourself be taken advantage of. But when you see an opportunity and you can help, you do so. You give freely, and you don't get with an expectation of what you're going to get back. And I find that phase of life to be incredibly rewarding. I've been there for a long time. And I view that some universal balancing act up there, it's keeping track. And I find that when I give freely without expectation of reward, good things come into my life. Yeah. Some of it's because people recognize the kind of person you are, and they feel like it's appropriate to give to you. But, I view my husband was that kind of a gift, this man who came into my life. People give you recognition, appreciation, want to buy your book, all that kind of stuff, because they see the quality of your character is that of a generous spirit. And I loved that when my husband shared it with me, and I put it into the book.
So you have such a fascinating story to tell that, how should I say, that in the time frame that we're living in may not have been accepted as readily as it may be now. And so at knowing these three phases, was there anyone that stepped up that surprised you, that was there for support for you and your journey?
Well, yes. There's a couple of things you triggered there.
Yeah.
I first revealed my inner sense of who I am with my older sister, the first person in my family that I shared that with. She was immediately accepting of it. And in fact, at the time, I was traveling for work and flew from Santa Clara to Portland, Oregon, once a week. And I would visit with her, and she finally said, "Why don't you just bring your clothes and a wig, and we'll go out together."
Oh, wow.
And she took me to the symphony. She took me to nice restaurants. She took me out and showed me that I could be successful. In return for that gift, I took my name, my first name, from her middle name, as to honor my older sister, and we're still very close.
What at that moment did that question, how powerful that moment was for her to say that? Did you fully accept that immediately, or did you have to be like, "Oh my, could get real right now"?
I was thrilled, terrified, and so happy that I would be able to experience living what I had fantasized before.
And did it allow you to lift some of that heaviness off your shoulders when she did that, when she invited you in? Or was it kind of like a bittersweet moment? Like perhaps you were, like you just said, you were terrified. However, you were about to step into a world that you longed for so long, for your entire life, basically.
So it wasn't bittersweet. The process of becoming confident in a gender you were not trained in, of course, is a long one. But it was a powerful first step for my sister to offer that, and it was support. Right?
Yeah.
It was the first person who said, "I'm behind you. I support you. I'll be there for you if you need it."
And it had to mean even more because it was coming from your sister, right? Someone that you grew up with, that knew who you were and your story, and saw
Yeah,
you in all the different phases of life, right? That had to
right.
be there. It had to be her, right? It wouldn't. It couldn't. It almost couldn't have been anybody else.
Well, the other people in my life were being very cool toward the idea by that time. So I'm just glad that she was there for me at that
Yeah.
time. But Jack said something I'd also like to respond to about the period of time and the level of acceptance we're feeling now. Actually, that level of acceptance is going way down, which I think is pretty obvious. There's lots of laws and demonization happening. One of the reasons I wrote the book. But I often say I transitioned in 1996, and there was complete acceptance. I never was challenged by anyone. There were no laws. There were no restrictions on bathrooms. There was no anything. People were doing that, and it was socially accepted. And for 23, 24 years, I never used the term trans. I referred to myself as a woman. I am a woman. Transgender is an adjective describing woman. And I lived my life as a woman. I only picked back up owning the transgender label when the governmental pressure, the political pressure to demonize transgender people started up. And I had a sense that my story, my successful transition and life story, could be instructive and could counter some of that demonization. So
Yeah.
that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that I started doing that. I wrote the book halfway through as a way to reach more people. I don't make any money on the book. I like the book to sell because it moves out into the world and people see the
Right.
story. But lately is probably the worst time for acceptance that I've experienced in my life.
It's sadly you raise a good point, because when I was asking that question in my head, I was going, "It's difficult now," and
Yeah.
that's unfortunate.
So I view
But
it as a pendulum. I view it as a pendulum. I think it'll swing back,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
We
reached a pretty high amplitude right now. So,
When did you yourself first feel that disconnect or awareness of your gender?
oh, probably 5 years old.
Wow.
My early memories are basically of seeing. I have a fraternal twin sister,
Oh,
two of us in the womb. So we were being raised, and I'll say groomed into our gender roles at the same time. And it really is grooming. I mean, she got to wear highly polished Mary Janes, and I had to wear tennis shoes. She got to wear ribbons and bows and, you know, flowers on her underwear, and I had to wear tidy whities, you know.
yeah.
And I saw that. I pushed my parents to raise me like they were raising her, and they just showed me that that was not true, that I couldn't, that I had to be this thing, a boy. One point, my mother said, "Oh, you're going to grow up just like your dad." And I went, "Oh, really?"
Oh,
Because my dad was not a very positive example. So,
so
yeah,
I
so
find
that
that
answers your question
Yeah.
very early.
Yeah.
I find that so interesting, Annie, that you are one of a twin, and your feelings and your inner desires were all the same ones that your sister had, or you wanted to be the same as her. Because that tells me this was from day one for you.
Well, there's some things about being a twin. Of course, the body forming and brain forming hormones come in through a common placenta, right?
Right.
And so my sister turned out a little masculine. I won't say butch, but she's a pretty strong individual. She was a military policeman in the service and a nurse in a very masculine jail. And she's tough. I'm not I'm not a wimp, but in some ways I'm not as tough as she is. But also both of us were very large babies. We weighed total of 15 pounds between the two of us. That's a big baby to carry, big two babies. And this was 1951, and I'm very certain that the doctors gave my mother diethyl stilbestrol. And there's a whole literature, medical literature, about the damage that does to reproductive systems and somewhat of gender perception of babies who are receiving of it. Female fetuses, it damages their reproductive tract, makes it very hard for them to conceive, and my sister went through that. There's less evidence of what happens to male fetuses, which is what I was. But I trace that chemical exposure as possibly a contributing factor to the way I felt in my life.
That's extremely interesting.
And am I correct in saying when you were on the naval nuclear sub that you put yourself there for a particular reason on that sub?
I was due to be drafted into the Army. This was during the Vietnam War, and they had come up with a system called the lottery based on your birthday. They rolled some dice and listed the birthdays in some random order, and they would have drawn up to 100, 200 birthdays to pull in the people they needed for the Army. And my birthday was in that grouping. So I knew that in the next year I was going to be drafted and have to carry a rifle in Vietnam. And I was not okay with that idea that I would be forced to shoot at people. So I chose the Navy, enlisting in the Navy to avoid being drafted in the Army. I had a grandfather who served on some of the very early submarines, and I knew that story. So I steered myself into the naval nuclear program, which all our subs at that point were nuclear. So that's how I chose to go in the service. I had a belief inside me that the daily fantasizing about being a woman, living immersed deeply in that macho environment would fix me, I guess is the term. I think a lot of young people with this kind of gender concern in their life look for ways to be fixed, from kneeling by your bed, clasped hands, praying every night, which I did, to change me, fix this, make me a girl, or make this go away. I thought being on a submarine would fix it. It didn't. It showed me things about male culture that I did not identify with, but I held myself back from the worst parts of the lessons boys in that kind of environment learn.
So you reference praying. How does spirituality play a part in your life today?
I consider myself a secular humanist. I was raised, my father was raised in a very strict Baptist kind of culture, and he was very judgmental and condemnatory of anything that didn't look right to him. My mother was very open. One of the very first words she taught me was egalitarian. And so it was quite a conflict. She told me later, they divorced at 11 when I was 11. And she told me later she married him basically for the sex. right after World War II. And I think she kind of didn't realize what she was getting. But where was I going with this? Oh, spirituality.
Yeah.
So when I was raised in church, in the Episcopal church, my mother's compromise with my dad was that we would be raised in the Episcopal church. But I was given the option to be confirmed, and when I was like 14, after my father had left, and both my sister and I chose not to be confirmed in the church. But I view Episcopal Church as quite an open and welcoming. And if you're going to carry a religion with you in your life, if you need that, I think Episcopalian's pretty cool. And the priest who married us is an Episcopal priest. Wonderful guy, one of our very best friends.
Yeah.
And he was a smart person. When he
Yeah.
passed, he gave me his cross.
Oh,
We had become close enough that he chose to bequeath that to me.
A special gift. Very
Yeah.
special. Yeah. So what would you have to say to someone facing this challenge? What piece of advice or wisdom can you give that individual?
I feel very strongly that I've benefited from therapy.
Mm.
The protocol really to have a successful transition 30 years ago when I did it required therapy. I mean, a surgeon would not give you the gender surgery without a letter from a competent psychiatrist or psychologist that said this was liable to be a successful thing. So I would obviously counsel find a competent, experienced therapist to the parents with the child. And my therapist told me something like 80% of the people who came to her initially did not end up living the rest of their lives as the other gender. That
Interesting.
there's a lot of other things that drive people to think this is the solution, and therapy is how you work through that. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend therapy. Anymore, it is not required. Sometimes a doctor who's seen you for a while will write you a letter and put you on hormones and do all these things. I think that's not prudent. And we call those clinics where you can do that gender affirming care clinics, and they're being outlawed around the country. That's just horrifying to me.
Yeah.
You're condemning some young people to very unhappy lives.
right.
Yeah.
And withdrawing that after you've started it, which has happened many places in our country now, drives people into depression
Yeah.
and
Right. Yeah.
fear that they're never going to be able to live the life they see they need to live.
The idea is to be a happier individual, right? You know?
Yeah.
You want to achieve what you've achieved. And so, so that tells me that maybe they didn't do it for the right reasons, or they weren't fully understanding what they were committing to.
Lack of awareness.
Yeah,
Or,
lack of awareness.
Well,
or
at this phase, all those people were adults,
Mm-hmm.
so they had a long life experience of being a cross-dresser or
Mm-hmm.
a drag queen or something. And but young people nowadays have a whole lot more information. I mean, in my generation,
Yeah.
and by 1996, there was just barely a tiny little thing called social media. It was America Online chat rooms, right?
yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
first place you could go in and find a group of people with some similar experience or concerns as you. That's where I discovered that there was a protocol of this 2-year-long protocol. It's called the Harry Benjamin Standards of Care that would help you decide if this is really the right thing for you. And as soon as I knew that was there, I leaped on it. I had to. So young people, though, get all kinds of conflicting information young. They know young things I was denied to know. There was no support when I was young. There was no term transgender. People didn't talk about things like that. I think there were one or two pioneering people, but that didn't make the Medford, Oregon paper.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so young children are much freer now to say, yes, I'm supposed to be a girl. Please, let me live as a girl. Then when they push on the parents and it feels genuine, then the parent has an obligation to get them in therapy, get them competent care, and understand the reality of it.
I have a two-part question. Is there one question that you get asked that you just wish people would stop asking? And is there one question that you wish they would ask?
Well, I've never been asked that question. That's the question I wish people would not ask me.
Fair game. Fair game.
A lot of people ask questions that subtly suggest that I'm not a genuine woman, that I'm a gay person. They approach it as if Frank and I are a gay couple. And I wish they wouldn't ask that question, but it's an opportunity to educate them, of course. They
Yes.
ask questions that show they don't understand the difference between sex, biology, and gender. Gender is a social expression imposed on these blobs of protoplasm, our bodies, right? How we look, how we act in different situations, all that is groomed, it's taught. So when I encounter the questions that people are subtly trying to get me to acknowledge that I'm gay, those are offensive, but and I wish they wouldn't ask those questions, to be honest. But otherwise, I'm pretty open. I try to be really open to the question people ask me. I have an awful lot of people following me on Instagram, something like 145,000 people, which totally blows me away. But every time somebody asks me a question that isn't a negative suggestion in it, I try to answer it. Sometimes I make a video about it. So,
Yeah.
So, Annie, can we talk a little bit about your children and how, as you were going through your transition, how they accepted it, or did they accept it, or how did it affect
sure,
them?
sure. So I have two sons. Their experience of birth was the strongest emotional reaction I've had in my life, the most deep-seated thing that, memory that has stayed burned in my existence. They were born cesarean, and I was standing right there as the umbilical cord was clipped, and that greasy, purple, squirming little human being was put in my arms. It's just tied me to my sons in a way that will never be broken, at least by me. So then, of course, raising them, I was a busy manager working in high tech and probably spent less time with them than I should or could, but probably every father says that about raising their kids. When my older son was 16, which was about 2.5 years before I revealed what my inner sense was and that I was going to transition. So 3 years before I came out, he came out as gay. And of course, my spouse and I put our arms around him and said, how can we help you? And it made absolutely no difference, of course, to us.
Wow.
By the time he was almost 19 and the younger boy was 14, I knew I had discovered this program that would help me understand what was going on with me and had committed to enter it. My spouse and I argued for months. She was adamantly against it and didn't want me to be her sister and ordered me out of the house, basically. Said, if you're going to do this, you can't live here. So I had to tell my boys I loved them, but I was having to not live with them. My ex actually ordered me to move at least one county away because she didn't want any of our friends to see me. The younger boy, the 14-year-old, he's now 42, 43, and he's always been just the salt of the earth. He's just loved me. I love him. He's never expressed a negative thought about me. I came back every weekend. He and I went out and played games and bowled. We learned how to bowl together. And, he's my rock. He was my emotional centering place for a long time. The older boy pretty soon would not go out with us. He didn't enjoy bowling. And then he stopped being willing to talk to me. And he finally, I learned, went to court when he was 19 and changed his name. He removed his last name, so he was no longer associated with my family name, and had changed his middle name, which was my former first name. So he broke every connection to me, just as a angry way of showing me how much he didn't like what I was doing. I've come to realize he was his mother's emotional support at the time, and he was very much in her camp and thought I was being cruel to her and deserved that kind of treatment. But to have your son, your young adult son, push you out of his life so dramatically, so permanently, so strongly, when I learned about that, I felt like maybe I had ruined my life. I was living in another county. I had a long drive home. It was a windy mountain road. I seriously thought about driving off a cliff. But I moved past that phase into being upset with him for being so cruel to me for no reason. And I carried that for a lot of years, and he wouldn't talk to me. He would not. We probably went 20 years estranged. I remembered all his birthdays. He never responded. I finally sought therapy about it, and I learned that the way forward for me, it was pretty clear, was to give over being upset about it. If I wanted to have something with my son, and I definitely did, to give it over. So I did. And I wrote him and told him I was giving it over. I was not going to press him about it. I didn't care why he did those things. I wanted him in my life. And he wrote back finally. And he said, let's give it a try.
Wow.
And we did. And we have a cool relationship now. He's not the warmest. I'm pretty sure nowadays we would be identified as on the autism spectrum. But we didn't see that in those days. He's 46 now. Has a wonderful career going. Lives alone, has not really connected with anybody long term.
So, Annie, when your son came to you and your spouse and told you that he was gay, you had not in any way up to that point, did you say anything to your spouse about your feelings or what you were feeling prior to him saying that? Or when he came to you and your spouse and he let you know where he was in his life, did that want you to kind of come to terms, or did that give you the strength to come to terms?
No.
Okay.
So, I was living a deeply closeted life about my gender perception and sexual orientation, of course, is very different. I was in a committed marriage, and I, at that point, thought that I was going to have to spend the rest of my life there. And the fact that my son was gay was just something about him, and my duty was to accept him and love him through it. So no, it didn't change my feelings about whether I would finally transition. As I said, that was a couple years in the future when I discovered this protocol that would help me be successful in it. I've actually not told you something that's been very important in my life. I really believe strongly that what parents tell you, how they set you up for whether you're going to be a success in life or not, is super, super important. My mother at one point sat me down and told me that my brother was going to live a hard life, that he had some mental issues, and he did. I have a couple-year older brother, that he was going not to be a success at life. But you, she said, you are going to be something amazing. You are going to be a scientist or an engineer. You're going to set the world on fire. She said, you are the great white hope of this family, which is not a PC thing to say anymore, but that's how she said it to me. And that has stayed with me my whole life. And I believe strongly that that message has carried me through all kinds of difficult situations. And parents should be very highly aware of the impact what they tell you.
And your mom was right.
There's the Frank.
Tell about your upbringing.
Yeah.
So let's
Leave it to
introduce
Beaver.
our listeners to
Somebody's
your
pointing at
husband.
us.
I am. I'm
Oh, yeah.
pointing at you.
Yeah, this is my husband Frank, who foolishly decided to marry me 22 years ago.
Wasn't foolish at all.
Oh,
I guess I'm probably one of the most straight, cisgendered male guys you'll ever meet in your life. And it has been absolutely redounded to my great pleasure, love, everything to have met this woman and to have,
Supported me.
well, yeah, that too, but
Yeah.
have her as my life partner.
Yes.
And he's taller than I am. He
I,
makes me look short.
I'm a retired Army officer. I had a delightful career of my own. I was retired when we met. I grew up with in a very supportive family. My dad was in the service for 37 years, and Mom was a registered nurse. In fact, once upon a time, actually worked for Annie's mom
oh wow.
in a major
Wow.
hospital in Southern Oregon. But my sister and I frequently say when these kinds of discussions come up that we had a leave it to beaver upbringing. And those of us of a certain age will understand that. We had
Yep.
incredibly supportive parents. When we even expressed any interest in, they're both children of the Depression. My dad was born in 1902. My mother was born in 1912. So they're quite a bit older than we were. But they both lived through the Depression. And they were not overly warm or excessively. PDAs were not common, shall we say.
But they were open to the
But they
variety
were
of people in the
absolutely,
world.
that's right. They were, Dad commanded one of the last all black units in the United States
Oh,
Army
wow.
in the
Wow.
late 1940s. I grew up in the service. As my son frequently says, we grew up thinking everyone was green. Color had no
great.
meaning.
Right.
And as a service member, the guy in the foxhole next to you, it really doesn't matter much what his religion is or what his color is or what his sexual beliefs are or any of that stuff. If he's well trained like you are, if he's doing his job like you're doing, then he is an equal.
And I think Frank's upbringing made it possible for him to see the whole person that I am.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Not just,
Yes.
turn down the opportunity to meet me because of some label.
I probably didn't know that thoroughly when her older sister Sue introduced us, but I've come to understand that thoroughly by now.
Great.
Well, I want you to tell.
Now I'm going to go finish where I was headed.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. So as he's walking away, I want to say that, and you hear it in the fairy tales, but this is definitely true love. This is what true love looks like. And I want my audience to really embrace that because.
May I share something?
Yes, please do.
There's my mother was a very powerful administrator of nursing, RN, and she turned to therapy later in life in the 70s. She shared a book with all of us kids by M. Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, but one of the key things I took from reading it was that you have to be there for your partner's spiritual growth, and not just religious, but what they need in life, you have to provide for them, and they have to provide it for you. And that's what makes a loving, long-term relationship. And so many
Right.
people are not willing to do that. They have limits on what they feel is appropriate. And
Right.
Frank has been there for me, and I've been there for him in a way that nobody else ever has for each of us.
Well, I think beyond the fairy tale, you have what that message is. That is true love.
Yeah.
And I think
thank you.
that I'm. It's something that this is what this is all about. This is the message. And Jack and I, we try to really have guests that that leave us with a message, and you are leaving us with many. Not, you're not going anywhere just yet. We're not done yet, but you have brought so much to the table already in acceptance, and just it's. I am really
Honored.
grateful for this interview with you. Yes,
Thank you for
I
the
am.
opportunity.
So we talked about your children. I know you've mentioned your mother, but in your path, what role did your mom play as you moved forward in all of this?
Well, she was, as I said, my strongest supporter. She taught me to be open to other people, to be, as I said, egalitarian. We had a black nanny for a while when I was very young. She was kind to this person. It required me to see her as a human being. My father was not. My father's message was never a powerful, a loving one. So obviously that is an influence as you're growing. You think, you see this powerful woman. When I was 4, she was the administrator of Rogue Valley Memorial Hospital's nursing staff. She was like number 3 in their chain of command. Very powerful, accomplished woman. Yeah. And that obviously filters in when you're looking at the gender roles that are trying to be taught to you. Do I want to be like my dad or do I want to be like my mom?
Yeah.
My mother told me I was going to be a success, and she was a success. My father was not.
Yeah.
And so later in life, she passed away. She smoked like a chimney in spite of being a well-informed nurse. And she had almost everything you can get. Several years before I transitioned, she had serious strokes and went down pretty quickly. So I never had a chance to share with her the real me, if you will. But I'm quite sure that she was a huge influence in it. I see her in the mirror frequently, and I love her. I treasure her. I know that she made me a lot the person I am.
Yeah.
I would imagine, though, Annie, she may not know your full journey, but I bet she saw something in you that was different. So she knew.
Yeah.
She may not be here for the very end of it all, but yeah.
And that could be
moms know. Moms,
exactly.
They know.
And that could even be in that time when she told you that you are going to be, something, that you are going to be something, when she was telling you
there's purpose behind
yeah,
that
there
statement.
was you have a purpose here, and you do. And so so what in your journey has been your unexpected gift?
You mean given to me?
Yes. From
Obviously,
all of
my
this.
husband. My husband was the most amazing gift. He's actually walked out of the room, so I'm not doing this to flatter him. But I did not transition with the idea that I would get married. I wanted to live my life as a woman, and I guess that implies maybe you would get married. But I was not looking for the powerful emotions that came over me. I believe that people have a chemical reaction in their brain when they fall in love that kind of says, this is the one. What is this feeling? It's something in brain chemistry. I had that with him when we first met. He had it with me.
Yeah.
Which is really pretty amazing. Something is ringing.
Yeah.
On your computer?
It's not my computer.
It's confirmation on what you just said.
It's your mom.
So
your mom is confirming. Yes.
That's the gift. That's the most powerful gift I've had, of course.
So Annie, how do we share your story? How do people find you? I know you do tours. Tell us your website, your Instagram, all those great things.
Well, Instagram has been amazing. I would really appreciate plugging Instagram. In the last year, I've gained 145,000 followers, and they're quite loving, wonderful people, mostly. Very, very little bit of pushback on me.
Yeah.
And I share all kinds of stuff on there. Just anything from I'm making a peach pie today to how my husband and I met to how I feel about, transgender people in sports. I just cover a wide range of stuff. So on Instagram, I am Tall Annie. I am Tall Annie. I tried to get Tall Annie, but somebody else had it. So I had to be I am Tall Annie. And that's growing and very well received. Actually, Meta has called me 2 different times now, giving me hints about how to do even better. They're just very much into supporting positive content creators. So
Yeah.
I've been but I do have a website. It has a bunch of stuff about the book. And I used to try to coordinate doing book talks through that. But now it's just a place to go learn about the book, and you can click on a link and buy the book through that. Or you can go directly to Amazon, Amazon.com, and put the title of the book in, Tall Annie, A Life in Two Genders, or my name, Ann Graham, and the book will come up. I've made it as inexpensive as I can because I'm not in it, and it's proved out I'm not making money with this book.
Share with us your website.
TallAnnie.com.
.com. Simple as that.
TallAnnie.com.
So, Annie, for anyone out there that may be navigating identity pressure or uncertainty, what would you want them to understand about living authentically?
I usually start by making the point that the word transgender or gay is an adjective. It describes a person. I'm a transgender woman, but I'm a woman. Tall Annie, I'm a tall woman. I am a kind of dirty blonde woman, whatever the color that is. I'm a married woman. Transgender is the same thing. It's not a gender. It's a path to a gender. So people who are in transition need to realize that the end goal is where they're going to go and live most of their lives. The path of getting there has got some learning and some bumps in the road, but you need to visualize yourself as having arrived and realize that people who are throwing labels at you and trying to share their insecurities with you, they're wrong. You need to be self-confident in the path you're on, that you're going to get there, you're going to be successful, and you're going to have a happy life. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I have a happy life, and people need, I think, models, case studies, success stories to encourage them on the way. And that's why I wrote the book.
Well, we certainly appreciate you sharing your gracious space with us. And I hope anyone who has questions, I feel like you would be very open to answering them if you contact Annie directly herself.
I read every comment on Instagram.
On Instagram.
That's
and she
hundreds.
responds right away.
That's hundreds of thousands of comments. I at least acknowledge that I saw it. If it's intriguing or an invitation to a podcast.
Yeah. Well, so this leads me to my final question. It's the one I told you was going to be the hardest question. What did you think when this Annie reached out to you out of the blue and just said, "Hey, come on my podcast"?
What appealed to me is that she is, I'll say, mature, that she's challenging herself to go back to school, and that this was a school project. And I thought the initial thing that we did together was a kick. That was fun.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
And she's obviously very upbeat and has accomplished a lot in her own life, and it appealed to me to connect.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just know, that's probably a good person.
Yeah.
I have been approached by people to do podcasts that I've turned down cold, just because it didn't feel right.
It leads you full circle to your 3 phases. Right?
Yes.
To the very beginning of our conversation, you're in that 3rd phase, and that allowed you to be open to this. So thank you.
I give back I'm in the Red Cross. I volunteer if your house catches fire. I go there. I put in smoke detectors for people. I volunteer at the local hospice. I visit people in hospice care and just chat them up and make them laugh and tell them stories. And I volunteer at my city. I'm on the appeals board. I've been a city councilor, so now if people come with complaints about the city, they have to pass through me to get any redress from the city. So I volunteer everywhere. It's absolutely the third phase of life, giving back.
Yeah.
So what I have to say about Annie is, yes, when I saw her as I was scrolling through Instagram, and she was very intriguing what she was saying, and I tapped into her, her page, and I'm scrolling through all her videos that she does and the things that she's saying, and then her husband is in the background and he's saying things, and I thought this is so cool. And when I DM'd her, she got back to me, and I told her straight up, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. Right.
Here we are.
Yeah. And here we are. So again, thank you
Great.
so much, Annie. And
My pleasure.
I am going to shamelessly assume that you and I are friends now.
You remember that stalking part of a friendship? Yeah, well,
I'm just going to assume, okay? And it may just be in me. I may be just dreaming this in my own head, but I'm going to assume that you and I are friends and are going to be good friends, and we will have many more of these. And, I think Jack and I need to take a trip out to Oregon.
I absolutely do.
Right,
that'd
right.
be
I would
wonderful.
love that. I would
All
love
right.
that. I would love to sit at a table and break bread with you, and just really have a conversation.
And a
That
connection. Frank and I
Yes.
love that.
yes,
You'd be well.
yes, I would love that. And I'm a chef. I could, if you don't mind, I could actually come in your kitchen and whip up a meal or two.
Oh boy.
Does
I
Frank
wouldn't
do a
mind.
good job of
Frank-
cleaning up?
Frank would probably be thrilled. I'm not that great a cook.
And I do take dietary restrictions into consideration, so I am across the board. So yes, we could actually do that a podcast.
We could.
Remote it. We could remote it. We do things like that.
Cook,
So,
Cooking in Annie's kitchen. Yeah.
right? Annie
With Annie.
cooking in Annie's kitchen. Yes. Look at that. We've got a whole new spin now.
Okay. Well, I look forward to whatever.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Annie. Jack and I, it's been such a pleasure. And I know I'm just really, oohing and eyeing, but I am being honest about my about my gratitude to you for doing this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, folks. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Gracious Spaces. We'll talk to you later.
And go see that book. Go on Amazon and get that book that Annie has. Yes,
I am tall.
Tall Annie. Let's all head to Amazon right now. It is something you want to read. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.